Well, gentlemen, thank you all three very much indeed for getting us started, as it were, for our conference today. Can I just say that by the end of 2 days, you are going to be heartily sick of the sight of me. I apologize for that now, but I'm going to be your link man through the course of these 2 days to keep us moving smoothly through it. My name is David Eads. I work for the British Broadcasting Corporation in London, but I'm very proud here as a member of Sport at the Service of Humanity. And a shameless plug, because I have some colleagues here as well, and one of them is running away right now. Monsignor Melchior is with us also. If Malou and Philip and Nate, could you all just put your hands up so that people can see who you are? Malou is at the back, Philip here and Nate. Yeah, first, thank you for being with us. Any questions you've got about Sport for Humanity, as we call it, please do address any of us over the course of the next 2 days. I'm afraid I'm going to add to that long list of thanks for Bill Husak, who's just disappeared around the corner for a moment, because he has already been the perfect host. When I flew in yesterday evening, he met me at the airport, and what does a perfect host do? Takes you straight to the nearest craft beer store. And we had a few beers. He was wise enough then to take me around the entire campus. I've seen every arena and venue, sporting arena, venue, weights room, you name it. So by the time I got back to my room, I was absolutely finished. Had a really good night's sleep, and I'm here to start, hopefully nice and fresh with you today. I have a small sacrifice that I need to tell you about as well. This is a first world sacrifice, because the timing of my flight from Heathrow happened to be when England were playing Tunisia at the start of the World Cup finals. I am a sports news journalist. This is a big deal. So also a special thanks to British Airways for delaying my flight by 5 hours, which meant that I was able to catch the match, which was very good of them. And within 10 minutes, you can imagine how good we were feeling, waiting at the gate. We were 1-0 up within 10 minutes. Sport is a very powerful thing to have in your kit bag. By half-time, we were drawing 1-1. And I was very cross with British Airways for having left me waiting here and watching this wretched match. As the game drew on, I'm afraid it only got worse. England seemed incapable of breaking down the Tunisian opposition. And just as the match was drawing to a close, we had the bing bong, and the British Airways lady came over and she said, "I'm afraid your flight's cancelled, you'll be leaving tomorrow." At that very moment, a huge cheer went up because we scored 2-1. Suddenly that didn't seem to matter. That, to me, was a great example of the power of sport. I think it's fair to say there is, as we all know too well, and I was going to talk a bit about it, but I'm not going to now, there is the underside, there is the downside, there is the dirty side of sport in the way in which it's used, manipulated, abused across societies, and indeed the way it's not shared. And I think those are the issues, really, that came to the creation of Sport at the Service of Humanity. Massive challenges, and best encapsulated, as you know, by Pope Francis, as he said, challenge yourself in the game of life as you challenge yourself in the game of sport. That kernel of a notion was picked up by Chris Lang, who I would describe as the real sort of founder, the father of Sport at the Service of Humanity, based in Toronto. And he brought people together to say, well, what should we do about this? And a few of us were scratching our heads as to how it might work. So Chris had the brainwave of resolving it all by forming a committee. Which was a great idea, got some great people involved, but it was fascinating what came out of that. This is part of what came out of it: love, compassion, balance, respect, enlightenment, and joy. These are elements which are absolutely compatible within faith and within sport. And I think it's interesting that so much of what we talk about is sport. These are not sport words, because it's what happens on the pitch and it's what happens off the pitch, and it's part of life. And the idea of creating these values, and I'm not pretending we were unique in coming up with them, but bringing them to the fore, was for many of people on that committee to say, wouldn't that be fantastic? Every child who goes for their first game of basketball or training session on a rugby pitch or tennis, whatever it is, that these are inculcated in everything they do within the framework of their sport, and that they take it home with them. And that's part of their life from day one, if you like, within sport. And others on the committee said, Yeah, great, lovely idea. But who's that serving? Who's that really serving? And there was a feeling that ultimately it's serving the you and me's a bit, really. And what about the rest of the world, the people who don't have those opportunities in the first place to get the setup, to get the values? And that sent us back to the drawing board, and we ultimately came up with, I suppose it was our holy trinity in a way, the 3 I's. Inclusion, involvement, inspiration. These were the red threads that needed to run through our Vatican conference. Inclusion, I think, goes without saying. All those people who are excluded from what we consider so standard, I suppose, excluded from opportunities of taking part in any way. Now, that could be through poverty, the background they come from, the lack of facilities. It could be through war, of course, the refugee crisis that we're seeing across the world. Only last week, actually, I was reporting on the 600 or so migrants stranded in the Mediterranean because the Italian government, frankly, had had enough. The Maltese government didn't want to take them. In the end, the Spanish government made an exception and said they can come here. Now, what really got me was that there were 26 nationalities on that boat of 600 people. So there are millions of people around the world who've got nothing. And the idea that they could have sport, well, how low is that on their horizons? And yet we know what it can do, and we know what opportunities we could create. So that was seen as a very important element. Ethnic minorities across the piece, the diversity issue, the gender issue, LGBTQ issues, these need to be confronted and need to be approached. And that all fed, if you like, into the great silo that was the Vatican conference. So what has come out of it is a host of other events, and this, I have to say, I'm very proud to say, is an absolute beacon of what we want to see develop, and the sort of people that we have here in the room blows us away from where we were just barely 18 months ago. So that's a big thanks to all of you for getting engaged, for taking this on, and for thinking that it is a worthwhile mission, at least to embark on and see what we can do in accomplishing it. So enough of my little spiel. Let's get on to the matters in hand.